So hi, this is Stan Goff. I'm the managing editor of Dental Products Report, and today I'm excited to be talking with Dr. Kim Kutsch. He's been around dentistry for a long time. He's been an innovator in, everything. Dental lasers, minimally invasive dentistry, caries risk, and getting caries early on. So hi, Kim. I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we've got a lot of good topics to discuss today.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dan. I've known you for a long time. You've been in this industry for a long time as well. I graduated from dental school in 1979, built a large, successful practice in my hometown, raised a family, and then, 20 years, I think, well, not even that, 10, 12 years into my practice, I started looking for, better ways to treat patients, try and get better outcomes, do things that were more minimally invasive. And so I started with lasers, went to microabrasion, and that's kind of where it took me into a lot of other technologies. But my passion has always been dental caries. And so I kind of circled, I look at my journey, and I was always trying to figure out how can I treat patients better and how can we more effectively treat this disease. And it's the #1 disease in the world. And I really wanted in my career to try and make some advancement in how we approach and treat that disease for people. So that's kind of who I am. I've been an innovator. I've started, a number of dental companies and designed a lot of products. I kind of have resisted the title or concept of entrepreneur. It was such a cliche back in the 80s that, in my mind, I had kind of a negative connotation, but I finally gotten comfortable with the fact that this is kind of who I am. It's part of me. I design products. I see things that maybe other people don't see, and have the good fortune to actually bring them to fruition and have products manufactured. And, I've had the experience and the knowledge and the opportunity to actually take concepts and then actually create products from that. So
wonderful. So my next question is kind of twofold. I was going to ask you about the company in particular, Oral Biotech, also known as Carefree. And you have some great products along the lines of caries detection and avoiding the risk and fighting this disease. It's also a couple of products that are even more so now, more aware and more impactful during COVID-19. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Carefree and some of those products?
Yeah, so Carefree came about really a couple of colleagues and I. My passion is dental caries, and so when I finally understood that dental caries is a disease rather than a series of holes in teeth, I really got my brain around the fact that we need to treat dental caries like a disease, and started looking at what are the best kind of products to help support patients and trying to get a healthy biofilm, get back to health, stop having cavities. What are the risk factors driving their disease? Going through that whole process. And I really came across Dr. Philip Marsh's research from the 1980s that was real clear that the selection pressure on the biofilm is acid. It's all about the pH. And so, one of the things I tried early on in about 2000, 2001 was I wanted to find which dental products had the highest pH, like saliva, and we would try treating patients with those, recommending those products, and see what happened. And as I was testing products, it was kind of a surprise to me that they were all acidic, and I mean virtually all acidic and pretty acidic. And I thought, well, that's it may have other properties that work and that they have good research on, but I want to change the behavior of the biofilm. I want to change what's going on there, and I want to treat that. And acid is already the problem, so I need to do what the body does, with stimulated saliva to protect the teeth, and we need something that's alkaline. And so that whole company started from the standpoint of there was a need for, in my mind, for an alkaline product. And I had the expertise on how to start a company, how to deal with the FDA, how to write patents, how to, from the previous, companies that I had. So we decided to, try some products and see what happened. And immediately I saw a change in my patients and my treatment outcomes. The biggest challenge in all of that is, Stan, is that I didn't understand why all the products were acidic. And of course, what I know now is they're acidic because of shelf life stability, and nothing wants to grow in a pH of 4.0, and everything wants to grow in a pH of 9.0. So that took us a few years to get that solved. So we have a whole product line, and one of the antimicrobial agents that we incorporated, I was using chlorhexidine, I switched to iodine. I was looking for some kind of silver bullet, if you would, to try and help change the biofilm. And the big challenge was I wasn't getting the results that I was looking for. And then Jorgen Slotz was promoting the thought of using sodium hypochlorite. And I found out the FDA had grandfathered it. So we started working with sodium hypochlorite as a rinse that we could use, as an antimicrobial treatment. And at the same point in time, it has a pH of 10.5. So we were really driving that alkaline concept home as well for the biofilm in the patients. So that's been a real successful product. It's been, I think, a real core part of our approach to treating those real high caries risk patients. And interesting, well, this whole year has been, it's been the weirdest year of my entire life. And
I'm hoping.
I think that's true for like everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't care what industry you're in. I don't care what you do. Even if you were retired and sitting at home, it's been the weirdest year.
Yeah.
Ever. And I think I can safely say that. But one of the developments with COVID was, I think we started looking at how do we get back to practice, as a profession? How do we safely get back and start seeing dental needs didn't stop just because COVID came around. Like, dental disease didn't just take a time out, see you in a year kind of thing, right? So, it's really an essential service. I mean, there's emergency care that has to be done for patients in dentistry. And so trying to get, and then we all have practices, so they're all small businesses. So, you have that impact too. So that's been the challenge. And how do you balance that being safe, providing safety for your patients, taking care of your patients, making sure your business survives? I mean, it's been a juggling act, I think, for everybody, and it's been a real challenge. And I'll say this, Stan, I'm really proud of our profession.
Yeah.
I think the steps that we took, the ADA, our state component societies here in Oregon, I mean, we get an update daily on, what's going on with the pandemic. And I think we've had the opportunity in the past to take a serious look at infection control. Dentistry is really a leader in that.
Has been for a long time.
And have been for a long time, right? And I mean, I've been around long enough. I go back to the 70s when we practiced without masks and gloves. If you can imagine. I mean, I'm sure there's young practitioners going, "Huh? I mean, how could you put your fingers in somebody's mouth?" And yet we did that for years. And then during the HIV epidemic, suddenly we started wearing masks and gloves, and we started thinking about our gowns, and we started, behaving, took our infection control up a step. I mean, we responded. And I think we've responded again now, and I think appropriately so. Like, I can't imagine anybody today that would go back to practicing without wearing masks and gloves.
Yeah.
And I think now that we're wearing a higher grade mask, and people are wearing, face shields, and they're wearing ear covering, and they're dealing with their gowns, I don't think we're going back from that. I think that's a new normal for us. I mean, why would you go back? Knowing now what we know, why would you go back? And so one of the things that we have age-old science that goes way back to the 70s, using a pre-procedural rinse to reduce the pathogenic load in a patient's mouth before you do any kind of dental treatment on them. And so we've had a lot of research on that. There's been a lot of papers, good papers written, in the last 45 years dealing with, the high-speed handpiece, the air water syringe primarily, and ultrasonic handpieces were technologies that created aerosols. Suddenly we have these aerosols, in our practices to deal with. And so if we can reduce the contamination from those aerosols, that's one of the safest things that we can help do as well. So the pre-procedural rinse, I think, is here to stay. I think that is, why would you, I was talking to some colleagues yesterday, and it's like, why would you not do that? Knowing what we know now. And so the research that came out early in March on COVID specifically was looking at what kind of antimicrobial agents are effective against, this particular virus. And it turned out that sodium hypochlorite turned out to be one of the most effective agents. And, here we are, Carefree, with a sodium hypochlorite rinse. That it just happened to be, and the research supports that. So a lot of people now are using our rinse that we created to treat dental caries with as a pre-procedural rinse as a part of their routine practice to kind of help reduce the, the microbial load of that aerosol for every patient. So that's been
Yeah.
it's been a great development, and I'm happy that we had something that helps people.
And that's the CTX4 treatment rinse, correct?
That's a CTX4 treatment rinse, and now
so it's been around a while and it's done a lot of good things, but now the impact and the awareness and the benefits post-COVID are even better.
Oh yeah, so that rinse has been on the market for 16 years. So we understand a lot. We've done research with it. We know that it's very effective as an antimicrobial rinse. And now suddenly it's like it's kind of taken a center stage in treating the COVID virus. So that's been something I'm really happy that we had a solution that we could right away step in and help practitioners with.
Yeah. In addition to that, there are other things, including, air filtration systems and all the talk about reducing aerosols in any way possible. And you've also got a background in that, and you could share some thoughts. And you also got a couple of clients maybe you can tell their stories.
It's, if you'd have told me, well, let's back up a second. So in the 90s, Stan, you remember one of my first companies, we created microscopic air abrasion devices, and then I built HEPA extraoral vacuums to help collect that dust, coming out of that mouth. So, that was a whole engineering procedure that I went through, 25, 6, 7 years ago. So I understand that technology inside and out. I mean, I built those vacuums for, 7 or 8 years, right? And I still actually had a couple of them. And actually I had 4 of them still from the 1990s. It still worked well, right? Although, I think one of the challenges for us as a profession is that we've kind of been cavalier about, or we've ignored the real dangers of that aerosol that we work in. It's a biological active aerosol, and we work in it every day. And I've worked in it for 40 years. And I think you get kind of complacent about, nobody gets sick, nobody dies. You don't think about it. Hey, yeah, it's just the aerosol. Yeah. It's like you're working in saliva and blood. You got a mask and gloves, and
just goes
it's just what we do. So you don't really think about it. And then I think this COVID pandemic was kind of a wake up call for us as a profession. And I think it's something that I've done a lot of personal investigation and research, and looking at research on the dental aerosols and the COVID pandemic, and then other issues that I'll talk about as well. But, if you'd have told me in January that before this year was over, I would be spending the majority of my time developing and building extraoral vacuums to treat a virus-laden aerosol, I think I'd have had a really good laugh, right? I mean, who could anticipate? I mean,
yeah.
But again, I was just sitting here looking at, okay, what else can we do for this aerosol to treat it and protect people? And while I know that a extraoral HEPA vacuum will work, the challenge for that technology is that HEPA filters, by definition, successfully remove 99.97% of particles down to 0.3 microns. And that's a really critical number. The challenge is for us, so they're very successful at doing that. The real issue is, okay, so all the virus particles are smaller than that. They're from 0.1 to 0.3. So you've got those virus particles will go right through a HEPA filter, right? Interestingly enough, NASA, probably 30 years ago, discovered, based on their science, was that you could actually trap those virus-sized particles in a HEPA filter very, very effectively, but it becomes a function of the velocity, and you have to slow the velocity down to 0.06 miles an hour of that air volume going over the media of the filter. So the biggest engineering challenge becomes that aerosol is coming out of the mouth at 50 miles an hour. If you don't have a vacuum here that's operating at 50 miles an hour, you're not capturing the aerosol. And my thought is, if you're not catching all the aerosol, why bother?
Yeah.
Because you still got stuff in the air that you're breathing. And masks and face shields are only so effective. And I really wanted to get rid of all the aerosol. So the engineering challenge was to create a vacuum that had a 50 mile an hour air velocity here, and then 5 feet later inside of the vacuum body, the air was moving 0.06 miles an hour over the filter. And if you do that, it captures 99.995% of virus-sized particles. So, I mean, literally only 5 out of 100,000 will get through. So it's literally the safest, cleanest air that you can provide, but it takes kind of some special engineering to design it from that standpoint. And so again, I have contacts with, I called an engineer I've worked with for 20 years, and I said, here's our problem. Here's the solution. We need to figure out how to marry these two issues together, and then we'll have a solution for practitioners and be able to really control that aerosol. So that's what I've worked on all year. We finally have that product on the market. We're manufacturing and shipping units. I have to tell you that I've been in manufacturing now for 30 years in dentistry, and the supply chain issues right now are so challenging that it's like literally trying to buy toilet paper in March. I mean, trying to get any kind of materials or goods right now to make a product with everybody's scrambling. And so it's really hard. Lead times for getting bottles for rinses, used to be 4 to 6 weeks. Now it's 8 months.
Wow.
Right? So from a managerial standpoint, there's some real challenges that go on in manufacturing. Every manufacturer is dealing with that. But in terms of being able to meet the need and the demand, for your clients and customers. So anyway, so that's the vacuum that we built. You can accomplish that, and it's very effective at controlling the aerosol. So so the two best things that we can do to protect ourselves, protect our patients in this whole environment is pre-procedural rinses, reduce the pathogenic load in that, the biological load in that aerosol to begin with, and then have an extraoral vacuum that's effective in terms of removing not just particles down to 0.3 microns, but actually particles, below that size. So that's something that we need to address and consider.
Now, while you're not currently no longer practicing, you do own a couple of practices. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition through the pandemic for those practices, the protocol that had to change, and how the patients returning how that flow has been? And
Stan, and that's a really good question. I think we're all kind of going through the same kind of rebirth here in our practices and that experience. We've been met with, I think, really pleasing confidence from our patients. Of course, everybody's doing this. We're, keeping them in their car until their appointed time, and we call them and have them come in, taking their temperature and making sure they wear a mask into the practices. And then when they see, and of course, then we've got the sneeze shields at the front desk, and we've taken all those steps. And now, of course, we look different in the practice because everybody's gowned up completely. We got foot coverings on, we got hair coverings, we're mask and glasses and a face shield, and we walk them in and sit them down, and I think they see that it's like, oh, so you're serious about this. Like I say, I'm really proud of our profession in terms of how we've approached this. Everybody's taken this seriously, taken a real serious step about it. And so I think it's inspired a tremendous amount of confidence. We've got, I would say, 90+% of our patients are very comfortable coming in to see us. In fact, they compliment us and thank us for, the extra steps that we're taking. I would say there's probably about 5 to 10% of our patients that are still quite fearful.
Yeah.
And I think if we look at, society in general, there are some people that are just afraid to leave their house. They order the groceries online. They haven't been outside. They're really fearful. And I think, I'm not going to fault them for that, because
Sure.
this virus is real.
It is.
People are dying from it. I have a very good colleague researcher who is in the hospital right now that we're all praying for. And I know a number of colleagues that have had it and recovered. So they didn't catch it in the dental practice, but it's real. So a lot of people have lost loved ones. It's taken a huge toll on this country. So, but I would say I've been pleasantly surprised at how well people have come back to the practice. I went and had my teeth cleaned myself last week. And you know what? Going through the process as a patient inspired a tremendous amount of confidence for me. Like, I walked in and said, I feel totally comfortable here. Of course, I used the pre-procedural rinse. So, I took my mask off, and I've got
a little inside information there.
Yeah, and I've got this extraoral vacuum right here next to my mouth that I know is protecting me and everybody in that room. So I think that patients are coming back to our practices in in a real timely fashion. I think everybody in the profession is taking this very seriously. Um,
Yeah.
I would like to say, going back to the aerosol stand, one of the things that I read in March, as I was putting together a presentation for practices on like, what are we going to do now? What are we going to do next? And how do we practice dentistry safely going forward? And I was, at that time, we were designing this extraoral vacuum, and I'm looking at this and trying to figure out how to capture these particles. And we now know from the CDC that that this transmission of this particular disease is aerosol borne. And those aerosols hang it's not just droplets, it's aerosols. And they hang in the air for 12 to 24 hours, right? So that's a real consideration that we need to take seriously. But the CDC released a report in 2017 on dentistry and idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And I hadn't really heard of that condition, and I thought, well, that's interesting. I'm gonna read more about that. What's that all about? And it turns out that based on data that they have, that dental professionals, so this is dentists, hygienists, and assistants, are 23 times more likely to develop idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. And it's really a condition where your lungs just turn to scar tissue and you die. I mean, it's progressive, it's fatal, there's no treatment for it. The average time of life expectancy from diagnosis is about 5 years.
Wow.
And we're 23 times more likely to develop that than anybody else. And at the current time, the belief is that it's from the continuous exposure of that biological aerosol of just pieces of bacteria, the little particles of bacterial protein that cause an inflammatory response in your lungs. And you end up over a long period of time with your lungs turning into scar tissue. And so I read that, and it's like everything else, Dan. You hear about something and it's kind of abstract, it's like, oh yeah, well, okay, I've never really heard of it. It's like, okay, well, that's not what we need to think about. File that one away. And the following Monday, I got an email that one of my colleagues had just died.
Oh man.
And I thought, wow, that's weird. I didn't even know he was ill. What happened? And they write back, and so I'm on an email chain with 20 dentists and writing back that he died from idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, and he was 70 years old.
Wow.
And I literally was stunned. And then one of the people that I know well on the email chain said, yeah, my dad, who was a retired dentist, just died from it, and I watched him die. And it's an awful disease. And suddenly it was like the lights went on. Yeah. It's like, this isn't some thing out in fantasy land. This, and it's a CDC report, and it's not real. And it's like we've been so complacent. Me included. I've been guilty of this as the next practitioner. About you just don't worry about the aerosol, and suddenly it became real home and real for me that this isn't just about this aerosol issue for dentistry. This was a wake up call, and it's not really just about COVID. It's about we need to be thinking about addressing this aerosol. We need to take it seriously, and we can protect ourselves. So the same thing, Stan, is like, would you ever think, knowing what I know now, I've told hygienists, dentists, I have them in all my practices, every operatory now, but I've told my colleagues, it's like, knowing what I know now, I would never treat a patient without one. Like, why would you?
Yeah.
Like, why would you take that risk? Because that risk is real. People are dying from that as well. Why expose yourself to that risk if you have a solution for it?
There are solutions.
So Stan, so that's something that's a topic that is kind of near and dear to me at this point in time too. So again, so
yeah,
I knew a solution. I had the ability and the opportunity to kind of make that happen and create that product and bring it to fruition. So we did that, and and my hope is that I hope that we're able to help dental professionals be safer, and that hopefully down the road in their life and their career, they're not, they don't suffer from that disease. But it's time for us to take this aerosol seriously. So if it does nothing else other than give our profession a giant whack upside the head to say, you know what, I don't care how you do it, but you got to start thinking about this aerosol as an issue long term. So so that's what I've been working on. It's interesting.
You've been keeping busy, but it's been a difficult year at times for every industry, for lots of people. Like you said, a lot of people have suffered. Going forward, I guess you'd have to think that on a positive note, there have been some things that have been learned and there are some solutions. And if something, God forbid, this terrible were to happen again, I think the industry is better prepared to handle it.
Oh, I think, Stan, going forward, I see nothing but bright, wonderful things for our profession. I mean, dentistry is a great profession. We do so much good for so many people. And I think that I'm really proud of, I'll say this again, I'm really proud of how we as a profession responded in this situation. And it's been a challenge for all of us, but I mean, we've taken it seriously and we've all stepped up our game. And I think we're not going backwards from that new level of infection control. I don't think we're ever going back. So going forward, what I think is that these viruses are coming, these novel viruses, this isn't the last one, right? I mean, I think that's clear to all of us. They're happening at about an average of every 4 years. That's probably just going to continue to happen. And I think that we will be much better prepared for the next one. And it may not even be an event for us. I mean, if we're able to control the aerosol, it may be that we're considered an essential service that doesn't even shut down if we have, God forbid, we have another pandemic like we're right at the moment. So I think that the future is bright. I think that we're going to. I always like normal is such a attractive term right at the moment. I think we all want our lives to be normal again, right? And whatever that it happens to be, and there will be a new normal. But I think as we things settle down and we have better treatments, better understanding of this virus, better treatments, and maybe perhaps a vaccine, and our lives kind of get somewhat back to some semblance of normalcy, that I think you're going to see great things happen in dentistry. I think we're going to come back. We're going to come roaring back. So I mean, we have great treatment. I think the future is bright for all of our practitioners.
And we're due for some good news. It'll be nice to see some keep coming.
Yeah. I mean, it'll be nice. I'm on the Oregon Dental Conference Committee, and every dental meeting has been canceled this year, essentially, right? There are the ones that are happening are virtual, and like you and I, like right now, right? I mean, we're all zoomed out to death, kind of, but I really miss the contact and the camaraderie in person with my colleagues. Talking about our experiences, sharing patient stories, and just the things that we do as colleagues, and I think we all miss that human contact in our daily lives, period. So I hope that, one of our challenges Tuesday night was, what do we do about next year's conference in April? Do we try and plan an in-person meeting? Do we just go ahead and punt and plan a virtual meeting? And I think that all of us want to get back to being able to see each other in person.
Hands-on demonstrations, lectures, meeting people, sharing stories.
Exactly, right. So I'm hopeful that next year we can kind of get back in person in some of these meetings. So
gotcha. Well, I do think with all these advancements, the education, the technologies, I think the industry has shown that it can adapt and make great strides, and we're looking for a much better 2021.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. I think 2021 is going to be awesome for us. And again, the dental profession really, took the bull by the horns here, stepped up the game. I mean, in a big way. And I think that's going to pay dividends for the profession, going forward. We're a highly trusted profession, and I think that's not going to change.
Yeah. Well, I think I appreciate your time today. We've addressed a lot of wonderful stuff, and I know you've got another article coming up for some dental products reports. So we'll just keep sharing the information.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it so much, Stan. It's great to see you. Great to see your smiling face. And it's great to, if there's anything I can be a resource and help anybody that watches this, my interest is making sure that you all have the best and safest life that you possibly can. So,
well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.